And our job in some ways will be different. In our republic, the voters decide the course of our nation, both domestically and abroad. And they have elected Donald J. Trump as our president when it comes to foreign policy on a very clear mission. And that mission is to ensure that our foreign policy is centered on one thing, and that is the advancement of our national interest, which they have clearly defined through his campaign as anything that makes us stronger or safer or more prosperous. And that will be our mission. That will be our job across the world, is to ensure that we have a foreign policy that advances the national interest of the United States. I expect every nation on earth to advance their national interests. And in those instances, and I hope there will be many, in which our national interest and theirs align, we look forward to working with them. This is in many ways, and again it was referenced by President Trump yesterday in his speech, that he designs, that his overriding goal for global policy is the promotion of peace, the avoidance of conflict. And no agency will be more critical in that regard than this one. In fact, it's its founding principle and purpose. And that's what we endeavor to do, to promote peace around the world, because that's in our national interest. Without peace, it is hard to be a strong nation, a prosperous nation, and one that is better off. But there will also be challenges. We recognize that there will be those times, unfortunately, as humans interact with one another because of our nature. But there will be conflict. We will seek to prevent them and avoid them, but never at the expense of our national security, never at the expense of our national interest, and never at the expense of our core values as a nation and as a people. We are, at the end of the day, a nation founded on a powerful principle. And that powerful principle is that all men are created equal, because our rights come from God, our Creator, not from our laws, not from our governments. And we hope the entire world can one day live under that, and we will always, always be strong defenders of that principle, never at the expense of our national interest. Never at the expense of pragmatic foreign policy, never at the expense of the reality that oftentimes in foreign policy our choices are not between a bad option and a good option. Sometimes in foreign relations our options are two bad ones, and we're just trying to figure out which one of them is least bad. And that's unfortunate, but it is true. And that's a tough job. It's our job, and we'll seek to do it right and well. That is the core mission of this agency, and it will be the core mission while Donald Trump is president. And we will be effective on his behalf. I also want this agency to be, and I don't mean, not that it's irrelevant now, but I want it to be where it belongs. I want the Department of State to be at the center of how America engages the world. Not just how we execute on it, but on how we formulate it. Some of the brightest minds in foreign policy reside within this building and within this government. And we need to ensure that we have an environment here that's conducive to creativity, to boldness, to new ideas, to recognizing the dynamic world in which we live, one that is changing faster than it has ever changed before. And we need to be ahead of it. When the time comes for the principals to gather, or even deputies, I want the Department of State to have the best ideas and the best options available for the president. And then I want us to be able to execute them better than any agency in our government. That will also be a task of mine. I have watched from the congressional side from time to time administrations in both parties, in which sometimes the Department of State has been sort of relegated to a secondary role because some other agency can move faster or seems to be bolder or more creative. It's not your fault, but we're going to change that. We want to be at the centerpiece. We want to be at the core of how we formulate foreign policy, because we're going to have the best ideas of any agency, and because we're going to execute it better and faster and more effectively than any other agency in our government. And I know we have the right team to do it. There's no other agency in the world, there's no other agency in our government that I'd rather lead, because of the talent that's collected here in this room and those watching around the world. That will be our mission, and I hope we'll be able to do it together. There will be changes, but the changes are not meant to be destructive. They're not meant to be punitive. They're not out of the changes will be because we need to be a 21st century agency that can move, by a cliche that's used by many, at the speed of relevance. But we need to move faster than we ever have, because the world is changing faster than we ever have. And we have to have a view that some say it's called look around the corner, but we really need to be thinking about where are we going to be in 5, 7, 10, or 15 years. Some of the issues that confront humanity today have no precedent. They have no historic precedent. Some of the challenges we face have no historic precedent. We can compare it to another era, to another time, but they're not the same. Things are moving faster than ever. Think about how much the world has changed in the last 5 years. Imagine how much it will change over the next 25 years. And my sincerest hope and my prayer is that we will, as a nation, be able to leave the future generations with a country and a planet safer and better than the one that was left for us. And you will be a big part of achieving that goal. It is an honor to be able to lead this agency. I hope to do it with distinction and with integrity, working harder than anyone ever has at this role. And that will not be easy because some pretty hardworking people have come before me. But I know that we are up to the task. And I'm glad that I'm in the job, on day one. I was sworn in at about 9:15. I didn't mess up the oath. And we're ready to go to work, and I know you are as well. Thank you. God bless all of you. God bless our country. Thank you.